Hello and welcome to another episode of the Halloween Podcast. I am your host, Lyle Perez. I am finally back. Before we get started, I want to give a big thanks to everyone who supported the Halloween Podcast. I have been gone for a few months because, well, I couldn't afford hosting anymore. With how many downloads the podcast gets and the storage needed, it's pretty expensive. It's about $75 a month. But with the help of a few listeners who donated, we're back up and running. For now, at least. The Halloween Podcast is listener supported, so we really count on you to keep the podcast up. Alright, so yeah, that's what's been happening to the podcast. Big thanks to everyone who donated. To give my thanks to you guys, I decided to do another 30-show countdown here in June. This one will be a little different than the regular countdown that takes place in October. This one will not be every day. I'm saving the everyday shows for October. But for this countdown, I'll be releasing a show every day for 7 days. Then take a week off. Then 7 more shows. Take another week off. And so on. Shows will work so much easier for me this way. So for the next 7 days, expect a show to be released every single day. Now, what could I possibly be doing for the next 2 months? Well, do you remember a while ago I did a show on the book series Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark with Caesar? That one was a lot of fun. It's full of scares and nostalgia. If you haven't listened to it, then go back into the feed and take a listen. We go way into the series. If you don't know what Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is, it's a few middle grade books full of urban legends, scary stories that are written by Alvin Schwartz. It was one of the most sought-after book series when I was in elementary school back in the early 90s. There's 3 books in the series. There's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, then there's More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and then Scary Stories, More Tales to Chill Your Bones. The one that I remember most from my childhood is More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So now that you know the books, let me tell you what I did. Every story in the book is based on an urban legend or some sort of hometown tale. These stories were not imagined by Alvin Schwartz. He had gotten them from somewhere, but where? Where did all of these stories come from? That's where I come in. In the next few weeks, I am going to analyze every single story in More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and tell you where they come from. I tracked down the actual cited sources for the stories and compared the source material with the story in the book. I'll tell you where the story comes from and all of that good stuff. I'll give you as much information about the tale as I possibly can. It's pretty fun seeing where all of these stories come from. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did researching all of these things. So come back tomorrow for the very first episode of this wonderful Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark / the Halloween Podcast episode series, I guess. Who knows? It's going to be a lot of fun. If you like the Halloween Podcast and want to support us, you can do so a couple of different ways. You can leave us a 5-star review on whichever podcatcher you use, be it Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever. You can also become a Patreon supporter and get some extra bonus content. Just go to patreon.com/thehalloweenpod and get signed up. You can support our sponsors at the beginning of each show. And if you want to follow us on Facebook, you can do that too. You can just go to facebook.com/thehalloweenpodcast. We're also on Twitter @thehalloweenpod. Thank you guys so much for listening and for all of your support. I'll see you tomorrow for an in-depth look into the story Something Was Wrong. Have a good night.